FinTechTalk, the live webinar with no presentations, no PowerPoint, just talk.
Hello and welcome to FinTech Talk. I'm your host, Charles Orton-Jones. Today's subject is open banking. Now, open banking appeared in 2015, but there's still a feeling that banks have only scratched the surface of the potential of this, of all the possibilities. So to get to the bottom of open banking, we've assembled an elite panel. So without further ado, let's meet our experts. Guys, if you want to turn your cameras on. From Standard Chartered Bank, we have Mark Willis. Mark, just tell us about yourself. If you just turn your microphone on, tell us about yourself and just briefly what Standard Chartered is doing in open banking.
Yeah, thanks, Charles, and thanks for having me on the show today. I'm Mark Willis, and I lead the open banking ecosystem at Standard Chartered Bank. It's a very exciting space for us, a rapidly growing space, and quite different, just depending on where in the globe we look at these solutions. So looking forward to getting into some of that discussion today. Fantastic.
And Connor Tiernan from the buy now, pay later giant Klarna. Connor, if you turn your mic on, just tell us about your role at Klarna, what Klarna's doing in open banking.
Sure. Yeah, kind of great to be here. And I guess that's kind of the beauty of working somewhere like Klarna, actually do a lot more than how it might be perceived from the outside. We do a huge amount in the open banking space. We've got a vast infrastructure and actually we kind of embed open banking kind of decision making and payment flows and kind of every step of the journey. But then we help Klarna as a group, as an ecosystem internally, but then we also help others externally as well. So there's quite a lot that we kind of do in the space, and we're really kind of trying to push everything forwards.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that theme that really people don't always perceive the extent of open banking. It's doing so much more than consumers realize. And but again, this theme of that we've only just scratched the surface with open banking. Perhaps we could pull up this news story that UK City Minister says now is the time for banks to act on open banking. Connor, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, are we just getting started with open banking? It's been around a while. How come we're still getting these claims that we're only just exploring the potential?
I mean, it's great. Like we're kind of seeing the numbers kind of go up and up all the time, and we're seeing kind of more open banking transactions and payments occurring. We're seeing more accounts being connected, but then actually it's like, yeah, we really are only scratching the surface in some of what is possible with it as well. Like just being able to connect to your bank account. Okay, that's kind of one aspect of it. It's kind of what you do beyond that. That's when it starts getting interesting. It's like how you can use that for better decision making. So actually, as part of onboarding a new customer, offering them a loan, offering them maybe a line of credit, a mortgage, whatever it is actually you can actually kind of speed up and automate that process, and you can make it more relevant to them on an ongoing basis as well. So we really are just kind of scratching the surface today, but it's kind of great to see some of the adoption. It's great to see that actually certainly in the kind of UK, kind of the step beyond open banking, it's been implemented, but now we need to make it a success beyond that. And there's ongoing work with kind of what's called JROC, just to kind of secure the future of open banking and make sure that UK is still at the center and the front. But then equally, open banking, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different businesses, whether it's kind of payments, whether it's actually just being able to connect to an account, whether it's the data side. And actually, it's across Europe. It's also across many other jurisdictions around the world as well. It's just, I feel like the term open banking was coined in the UK, but actually it's being adopted and pushed out in lots of other countries around the world as well.
Absolutely, it certainly is a global phenomenon. Mark, I mean, Standard Chartered is a global bank, huge reach. What's your opinion? I mean, are we just scratching the surface? And if so, why have we been so slow to explore the potential of open banking? Why is there still so much more to do?
Yeah, I think certainly if you look at the standards that were put in place, and of course, UK was a pioneer in establishing the working group and the early PSD2 frameworks, and they focused on a very small slice of use cases. So if you look at what's in that framework today, it is really just scratching the surface. it's a little bit of an oxymoron because the banks have to comply with those standards, to operate in those jurisdictions. So banks kind of raced to get that regulatory compliance, and then later on realized, well, there's actually a significant amount of opportunity within this space. Just building on what Connor said, I think there's a whole lot more use cases that we can look at, and certainly if we're only going to do them from a regulatory angle and wait for those standards and bodies to be put in place, the growth will be a lot slower, right? So where it's a little bit inorganic, and let's say there are more commercial players that are entering as aggregators and dealing with the differences in the banks, you're seeing a wider reach of use cases beyond the typical account aggregation and payments.
Fantastic. And we have a gatecrasher to the episode. Finally, Patrick Langeveld of ING, who I think just had a bit of connectivity issues, is with us. Patrick, so lovely to have you with us. Perhaps you could just introduce yourself, tell us about your role at ING.
Sure. You guys can hear me as well?
Perfect.
Great. Yeah, sorry for the... sorry, I had some technical issues, but I'm Patrick Langeveld. I'm a customer journey expert within the open banking team of ING. I have a more commercial focused role within the company. So driving a lot of development of our API, our premium API solutions within the company, not only focusing on payments or accounts, but let's say all of the product areas we support as a bank. So lending, loans, mortgages, whatsoever. Not only in the Netherlands, but in other countries which ING is operating in all of our segments. So glad to be here and excited to look forward to the discussion.
Well, Patrick, we've started off by emphasizing that we're only just scratching the surface with open banking. I was wondering what your thoughts are. I mean, it's been around for a while. Why has the industry been so slow to explore the full potential of open banking? Is it creativity? Is it technology? What do you think?
I don't think it's technology. I don't think it's. I think standards has to do some part of it, but I do think there's initially a lack of use cases, right? I think though I must say, when I look at my numbers, right, from a banking perspective, I do think open banking, or let's say the PC2 regulation as such, is being used. Also if you look at, let's say, the basic numbers, number of API calls, number of TPPs with a new license, number of recurring customers, number of active customers, these are still growing on a month-on-month basis. So as such, I do think there's saying that open banking has some unrealized potential. I don't fully agree with that, but just by looking at the facts, right?
Well, user numbers are certainly up, but what about the variety of applications? I mean, we've seen, account aggregators.
Yeah.
We've seen some quite simplistic but very useful applications for open banking. But in theory, there's so much more we could be doing in underpinning lending models and stuff like that, which is emerging. So, what do you think, Patrick? Is that just something that's, again, the numbers are up, but should they be much further up?
I think, they should be much further up, and I think we can have that market consumer adoption discussion. But if you look at the use cases, right, it initially started off with personal finance management, money management, and I initially expected it to move more to let's say sophisticated solutions, right? Money on autopilot, investing. Maybe sustainability, these kind of things. You see this somewhat gradually happening, though I think there's still, from a use case perspective, a lot more to tap into, right?
Yeah.
Carbon footprint, I think, is a nice one. Account-to-account payments, I think that's really interesting also for a leading European bank as ING. Just to lower the cost for merchants, to lower the cost of transaction fees and whatsoever.
Fantastic. Connor, perhaps you could just tell us a little more about what Klarna is using open banking for, because Klarna has such a great reputation for financial innovation. What are you working on?
I mean, when you kind of boil it down to what open banking is about, it's just being able to connect to an account, kind of plain and simple. And there's with PSD2, put in more of a standardized framework around that. But when you boil it right down, it's being able to connect to an account. And when you look at it through that lens, it's something that Klarna has been doing for a long time. So the idea that, look, we've been connecting to accounts to enable customers to pay directly. So Fork being such an example of that. So an account to account payment that predates open banking. But then it's kind of actually, it's like if you start kind of building up from those layers, so it's like, okay, great, you can go and connect with all these accounts. But it only starts getting interesting when you start building on top, where you actually start looking, okay, what's beneficial to a particular kind of user. So yeah, looking at how can kind of provide further ways for customers to pay. So a nice, easy way for them to pay directly from their bank. So looking to, if you use your mobile banking app, you just use your Face ID to log in. In essence, you can just make a payment using Face ID as a result online. Makes it very easy for an e-commerce journey. But then also it's like looking at ways that we've got new propositions coming through and being kind of pushed out there, something like variable recurring payments in the UK. So being able to take, so using that, giving the authorization to take future payments from your account, which is great. It's brilliant. But that's taking a bit of time to come through. So actually what we've identified is that you can use other facets of open banking to enhance existing, existing solutions in market. So one such being direct debits. Direct debits work, they pull, but actually it's imperative that the funds are, that the customer has the funds in their account for you to pull them. If they don't, then you need to go back. It costs you as a bank, as a payment provider, to actually go and they take a further direct debit payment. So actually you can use open banking to make a quick call on the account, see that they've got the funds in there, and then take the payment. You can even use it to actually understand, okay, look, based on the customer's spending habits or when they get paid their salary, that is actually the best day to take the direct debit. So, I mean, that's just, I guess, kind of a couple of examples about the payments one side, but then also how you can marry data to enhance a payment offering as we move to the future, where something like variable recurring payments can maybe kind of step away from direct debits, but actually it just shows how you can kind of enhance direct debits today, something that we kind of already do. So you
already do it. I'd just like to know just how far along you are on this journey, because that's a wonderful model to spell out. But are you actually doing it? And if you aren't able yet to implement that fully, what's stopping you?
Already doing it, already implemented, and then also as part of the onboarding journey for customers is actually just kind of lots of touch points where open banking kind of enables us to understand, just say something very simple like verifying a user's bank account. And it's great that we can help kind of merchants and then users of the merchants of Klarna, but then also there's other fintechs, there's other TPPs, other open banking providers that also rely on Klarna's infrastructure as well, or this bank connectivity. But again, it's like, look, connectivity is all well and good. It's what you do and build on top where it gets interesting.
I also have been approached by TPPs alike, right, for variable recurring payments, and I do think it's a very interesting solutions, especially for merchants, especially for let's say the receiving side. Though it keeps the power, the control over the payment, right? With direct debit, you have after settlement, you still, as a consumer, as a payee, you still have control, right, for a select number of months. Whereas with VRP, that shifts, right? You do have more control before settlement. So what's really do you have any consumer insights of using VRPs over direct debits?
Something that we're kind of still exploring ourselves, but the UK would be, the UK is really trying to push VRPs, and it's been established in, say, kind of a me-to-me payment, so me topping up my own bank account. But in terms of utilizing it towards, say, subscriptions, say looking to say pay for Netflix or Uber or whatever, that's kind of the step that we all as an industry and ecosystem are pushing to make that jump and get into that future kind of me to business aspect of it. But yeah, we're very much kind of involved, looking at how we can kind of push it all forwards, involved in that conversation, and also looking at, okay, look, around Europe, are there ways that we can actually bring it forwards in, I don't know, other markets where actually it could be adopted to, Netherlands, Germany, Sweden, etc.
Gosh. Mark, can I ask you, we tend to think of open banking in the UK and the EU as a sort of domestic thing we're so good at, but of course Standard Chartered covers Southeast Asia so strong in places like Singapore. Perhaps you could just tell us what happens outside the UK and the EU. What is Standard Chartered working on?
Yeah, no, I'll take a slightly different spin on this conversation,
Okay.
and just to share, kind of the splits that we have between the consumer bank and, let's say, our corporate and institutional bank in terms of API and open banking adoption. And it is, at many magnitudes more where we're facing off with corporates. So I think, the guys have discussed some of the use cases in the consumer space and the ones that have come out of Europe, account aggregation, et cetera, et cetera. Now, has the adoption been that great? I don't think so, right? There's not that many successful consumer use cases around account aggregation. But if we look at the corporate space, by nature, these MNCs, these multinational corporations, are multi-banked. They're operating in multiple countries. They definitely don't want to go to every single bank's portal. They have a big requirement for this ability to pool in all their accounts and manage liquidity out of either their ERP system or their TMS. So we see a massive amount of adoption in that sort of part of our customer base, where they're looking for those efficiencies, they're looking for those direct integrations, and they're looking for that real-time liquidity management, right? So we're seeing a massive demand for those kind of solutions. There are partners, of course, that have entered this space that do this multi-bank connectivity, right? So that's not infrastructure that we go out and build ourselves. So I think similar to what Connor's saying in terms of multi-bank connector infrastructure, but focus very much on the corporate space and that deep ERP integration. The second, really big growth area is this notion of B2B2C, where we're facing off to a corporate or a business that's running their own customer platform, right? So this is kind of where the lines of, open banking, embedded banking, or embedded finance start to get blurred, right? And this is where, you're offering payments or collections into a super app ecosystem, or into an e-commerce portal where you're providing cross-currency FX pricing, or the ability to pay in a certain currency and then collect it in another, right? Now, the user of that customer platform has no idea, that there's a particular bank that's embedded their services within that space. Now, do these follow the PSD2 framework and the strict standards? No, but are they loosely based on consent, APIs, and data formats? Yes, absolutely, right? Because, as you go more east and into Asia, there's less of these, strict frameworks, and a lot of the regulators have taken a more central approach, right, versus a decentralized standards approach that you see in the UK and Europe.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Mark, does that mean that the innovation's moving maybe a little faster than regulators can cope with the emergence of these platforms?
Look, I think it's very different, right? So I listened to the guys talking about Europe and the adoption and the use cases and the TPPs and now the ability to validate those TPPs in real time. So there's great stuff that's coming out of there. But if you go to a market like India, for example, and you look at how they've got their India stack, right? So they have their UPI payment system, right? How they've enabled that, right? And that's more of a central model, right? And approach. There is no strict standard to say, okay, banks will follow these formats and expose their data and services in a particular way. So it's a different approach, but if you look at how some of that has fueled innovation and growth of digital payments and digital wallet solutions, it's just phenomenal.
Fantastic. I wanted to ask you guys about whether there was any downside to open banking. People talk a big game, but were there any risks to it, whether it's security, privacy, whether there is a danger? I saw that some of the US regulators saying there was a potential danger for banking instability because deposits could flow more easily from one bank to another, which was a slightly arcane objection. Patrick, what do you think? Is there anything to be nervous around concerning open banking? What can go wrong?
What can go wrong? Yeah, good question. Well, I think trust, right? So banks still have largely, or the vast majority of banks still have the trust of their consumers, of their clients, right? So I think it's not, with open banking, a lot of other parties come into the equation, right? You have TPPs, you have fintechs, you have PSPs, all using AIS or PIS services, doing payments, having reporting and account and balance information at their disposal, always, of course, prior to customer consent. So from a consumer perspective, your information, which all of the regulators have been saying years and years before the implementation of PSD2, keep it to yourself, this sensitive information. Yeah. And with the, let's say, entrance of PSD2, consumers are now suddenly can share this sensitive information. And from a consumer's perspective, it can be a bit complex where your information is being stored and shared and why it's being used for, right?
Very much so.
And even if you extend that horizon to open finance, it will be even more complex. So other products, other parties, you can share data even with non-banks. For example, insurance company also sharing data.
Is there a danger that consumers, are currently being very trustworthy, but as there's an explosion in interconnectivity with banks, that one bad apple will muck it up for everybody? But also, there's just poor judgment for consumers. You're right. How do they know how their data is being used? It's never realistic to ask people to read the user terms.
The fine print, yeah.
I mean, no one's going to read it, even if you're professional banking.
I think it's up to all of the industry participants, right, to be very clear, transparent, why what you're opting into, what you're giving consent to, why your data is being used, what data is being used. Not leave it up to the fine print, and really treat, let's say, consent not as a hurdle, but as a moment to educate the user, the consumer, to learn him or her about the proposition, about data, about with whom you're going to share it, or why you're going to use it, why you're asking consent, instead of approaching it as a hurdle.
So I wonder, for example, Connor at Klarna, whether you've got tremendous global name recognition, whether that really helps you, because consumers know. Klarna's got a huge budget. They can afford lawyers. They can afford compliance experts. They've got great QA. They're not going to balls it up for everybody. I mean, this is an industry where we're going to be seeing an explosion of innovation. We're going to be seeing all sorts of crazy and wacky startups trying to do something new. Do you think it's good for Klarna that you've got the clout that reassures people?
In one sense, yes, but actually, in order of kind of making the payments, it's not that you trust your bank when you're making that payment, rather than necessarily like, okay, the provider that you're kind of running through to make that. It's kind of how you implement it. And then in terms of kind of the data side as well, I mean, the data that you've got linked to your bank account is all about your own money. So it's all about the money that you own. So actually all those transactions is something that I guess kind of that you've done. And actually where we need to get to, and it's already kind of happening, is like, look, by embedding open banking within solutions, you don't actually even realize that you're using it. That's where we kind of need to, that's where we're already kind of getting to, where actually it's like, look, you're doing an online application for a mortgage, and actually it's like open banking is actually part of that. You don't even realize, and then that's when it becomes really beautiful, because then it's okay, look, you get a better decision, you get a better outcome, just by kind of connecting your account. But it is very much like, banks very much, kind of, they have all this, I guess, kind of data on you as one of their customers, but very much it's your money. It's just they're holding it for you. And then in essence, it's kind of all that data is actually your data. It's not the bank's data. So actually you're then enabled to get better products and services as a result of using your own data. You can get better outcomes. And then actually we could get to a point in the not so distant future where actually it doesn't matter at all where you hold your money, hold your funds, because you actually get services from everywhere. It's just like you hold your money in the bank at the back. So actually the banks need to kind of be upping their game in terms of the solutions and services that they offer, and being able to kind of be really agile, being able to kind of offer kind of intuitive, innovative solutions, because there's other fintechs out there that could be able to offer just an app. And it doesn't matter where you hold your funds. It's actually, you can just connect your account and then boom, off you go.
Absolutely. I was talking to the founder of Alba Bank, a new SME-focused bank in Scotland, and he said exactly what you're saying. He said, was it 2% of Brits actually switch their account every year, only 2%. And he said it's not a problem because they can just connect via open banking into their customer's existing account, look at the information, and then make a credit decision. So for them, open banking is everything. They could not exist without it. Yes, that's just a real world case of that happening. I was wondering, Mark, from your perspective, looking at downsides, again, what are the risks with open banking? We always try and give our viewers of FinTechTalk a expert view on this, and it's not something you read about too much, but what worries you?
Firstly, just to comment, I think we're a lot safer now than we used to be, right? Because people were doing this anyway before open banking, right? We had screen scraping techniques, and by and large, they're still used in a lot of places, right? So you had methods to get to the data if people were willing to provide their credentials. So I think with the frameworks, with the validation of TPPs, the registration of them, you're creating a much more trust-based ecosystem. So I think we definitely have lifted the bar overall. But yeah, what are the risks? Of course, I agree completely with Patrick, right? When you get into data sharing, particularly when we start talking about open finance use cases and bilateral data sharing, not only that, but what permission do you have to use on that data? Right? What rights do you have to analyze that data? How can you use it? How can you monetize it? I think we're still grappling with that, right? We have the technology, we have the ability to integrate, we have mechanisms to do consent, but when you start talking about data, particularly as banks and regulated entities, it's really difficult for us even to use our own data, right? So when we start sharing data in a bilateral sense, I can see that being quite a challenge for us.
Okay. Mark, if you had a kind of message for the industry, what would you ask people to do? I mean, do people need to work together on clear standards and cooperative technologies to make the next generation of open banking happening, or is that already occurring?
Look, I think it's happening. I think from where I sit and we're looking across, generally we're emerging markets footprint, right? So we're starting to see all these frameworks pop up within Africa, within the GCC countries, within parts of Asia. And they're all nuanced, right? And they're all different. So you're starting to get a very, they're loosely based on the same principles, but we're getting a very fragmented ecosystem, right? It's not a standardized global system like what you would get with Swift messaging, for example, right? So I can see the fragmentation, the regional fragmentation and country fragmentation. For us, to build products that are scalable across the globe is a big challenge. So I think the more we can, start to connect and create more of a global working group, this would certainly help a lot.
Fantastic. I'm interested in where the kind of money is going to be generated. And Patrick, you're the commercial brain for ING. For ING, what is the commercial potential? Because it's great for all these, lovely apps being able to tap into your customer's bank account information. But where does ING gain from all of this?
Yeah, good question. So let's say if you boil it down, that the regulation PSD2 or open banking is referred to in UK, it's just a cost component, right? We don't earn any money on that. So banks like ING started to create premium APIs which are suited for certain use cases demanded by either TPPs, partners, or clients, corporate clients. Mark already touched upon several of these use cases from a corporate perspective, mainly within treasury and cash management and payments. So I totally echo these use cases. If you look at how ING does it, at least in the premium API space, I do think we have some nice examples where we expose our products on third-party platforms, and that's still part of our strategy. So follow our clients. One of the, I think, prime examples is that we expose our loan origination products on the Amazon platform. So sellers on the Amazon platform in Germany, SMEs, can request loan if they need so. So by doing so, we really tap into that platform idea of exposing our products via APIs on third-party platforms to make our product distribution model more dynamic and flexible. So that's, I think, where banks are steering or going towards premium APIs and also on third-party platforms.
So there are pros and cons. I mean, from the downside, you've got innovators, new banks, maybe like Alba Bank, being able to look at your customer data and make credit decisions. But alternatively, if you move fast enough, you can capture this too.
Definitely, yeah. And I think this, if you look at, let's say, how ING does it again, we have, prior to PSD2 or years before PSD2, we invested in a global foundational architecture, right? One API solution for all of the 40 countries and 37 million customers we have. So all of the APIs we are building, PSD2 or Premium, are on that one single layer, and countries can reuse. It's a modular service, so countries, whether there's a service developed in Spain, Netherlands, or Italy, can reuse that same microservice.
Fantastic. Yeah. And Mark, just first on Standard Chartered. I mean, are you a net gainer, net loser? How do you make money out of all this?
No, we're certainly a net gainer out of it. It is, just echoing again what Patrick is saying. Certainly, premium APIs is where we monetize. I think direct monetization of APIs is something new for us, where you actually monetizing the API access or the access to the platform, and that's a level of maturity. And then of course there's the indirect monetization. So what value does this new flow bring? Is it bringing in new liabilities for the bank, new flows that you wouldn't have seen if you didn't have those partnerships and this ability to connect into these ecosystems? And of course, some of those hot products are around money movement, right? Being able to collect that money, hold it. And of course, us operating across many trade corridors, the FX business is a really healthy one for us. Where we can capture those cross-border payments within these trade ecosystems or remittance flows, right? So definitely a growing space and certainly something that generates a lot of value for us.
Yeah, a question for you guys, which I certainly haven't briefed you on, but is, where people are watching this and they think they want to learn more about open banking, I wonder where you guys learn, or what area you advise people to focus on. Is it about the technicality of APIs? Is it about security? Is it about going to the original legislation and re-scrutinizing it? So I mean, when people are watching this, what advice do you have for people? Patrick, what can you pass on to people? What do you think will help people?
Read. I would say there's a lot of stuff written about open banking from different perspectives, right? So TPPs, banks, all there's consultancy firms. They have a lot of papers written about open banking, consumer trust, market adoption use cases. I would definitely start from that perspective.
Fantastic. Connor, where do you get your inspiration from when it comes to open banking?
I mean, we've got different lenses to look at it. When you look at kind of from a TPP's perspective, so that's the open banking providers themselves, they'll have a different view to the banks. So again, it's just like seeing how we can kind of meet that in the middle. It's looking from from a business lens, from a consumer lens, like what's the best outcome from the consumer. From a business perspective, it's like, look, okay, we talked about monetization, but actually you can cut costs. Like you can dramatically cut costs and say, looking to verify new businesses, verify new consumers or anything like that, onboard them easier. So you can cut costs as well. And then also you can use it to enhance what you might already have. So there's kind of a huge amount that can be done there. But as kind of Patrick said, there's a hell of a lot of reading that you can do around it. There's so much that you can do. But if you're a business that's trying to embrace open banking, get the most out of it, don't waste your time by going and connecting with all the banks yourselves. It's like you just go and focus on building the product and actually look and work with someone else that can provide you that connectivity. And then you can kind of go and you can kind of bring the product to market. You can bring that solution. You can frame that, because like the connectivity, like we do that ourselves. It's a pain. But the thing is, we do that. We maintain all those connections, and then there's others that rely on us for those connections. But the thing is, we just do that. We've got products built on top, then others build their products on top as well. So it's like, look, that's what others should kind of be focusing on. Yeah,
fantastic. We have a question from the audience, which probably I can put to Mark first, which is from Rahul. Thank you, Rahul. He says to the forum, are the use cases largely focused on corporate customers than retail onboarding servicing in your respective regions? Mark, what do you think?
I mean, no, I wouldn't say the use cases are focused on either segment. Certainly, I would say it established as a much more consumer-focused segment because that's what people can relate to. In terms of adoption, for us personally, it's certainly a lot more in the corporate space. We do see a lot more demand for these use cases coming out of that client segment.
Okay, that sounds about right. If maybe to segue on to this, I always like to end by asking for a application or a fintech company that you admire in a certain niche, and we're talking about open banking. If I could ask all of you, is there a company or app that you really admire that you think maybe our viewers and listeners should go and explore? Connor, how about you? Have a think. I'll go to Patrick. He's always got a strong opinion. Who should we be looking at? Is there an app? Do you use that open banking service yourself? Do you use a kind of account aggregator or anything personally?
I mean, I use a multitude of different apps. Like a new account provider comes on market, I'll be testing out, kind of see what they do. So there's a whole host. But what'll be amazing to see is that it's not necessarily kind of an app this second, but it's like, look, how we can kind of encourage more people to kind of be using the payment flow. So using open banking payment, account to account payment by actually kind of embedding rewards into that flow in the same way that with kind of credit cards, you maybe get Avios or something like that. So it's like being able to, so it's not an app per se. I just think that that's something that we kind of need to see to kind of, okay, look, you get rewarded for paying over open banking. It's actually, it's more beneficial to you as a user and consumer. So it's not, rather than me kind of say, oh yeah, Klarna, use Klarna. No, I'm not saying that. It's more that, okay, actually something like that makes it more, actually gives tangible rewards to a user to actually make an open banking payment. I think that's really neat. And we're starting to see some players out there starting to play around with it. So it'd be cool to see that come more to the fore. Fantastic.
Mark, is there a open banking application or company that you admire?
Yeah, look, no specific consumer application I'm going to mention, but I think a good starting point, just some of the things Connor mentioned around, don't try and build this connectivity and infrastructure yourself. Go and look at one of the aggregators that provides this bank over-the-top bank infrastructure like a Plaid or a Tink. I mean, that's a really good starting point if you do want to get big coverage quickly. If you want to integrate with us directly, you're welcome to go check out our SC marketplace, API marketplace.
Good plug. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time. We've covered a lot of ground, and to our viewers, we'll be back next Tuesday, 4 p.m. UK time. We'll be talking, the subject is bridging your ESG data gap to deliver sustainable finance. A huge amount to talk about there. But for today, thank you so much, Connor, Patrick, and Mark. Huge pleasure hosting you. And to our viewers, hope to see you again next week. Thank you so much.